Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for making it here. Kara, Kristen, wonderful to be joined by you. I'm really looking forward to this panel. Kara works at Amazon as Chief Sustainability Officer. Can I call it that? VP Sustainability and Chief Sustainability Officer at GM. So this will be a great discussion, intimate group. So I'll definitely leave some time for questions. So think of them and don't be shy. Let's kind of start 30,000 feet. Talk a little bit about how you sort of, when your companies began to think about sustainability goals. Let's go way back to then. Sure. Let's start with you, Kara.
Sure, happy to. Thanks, everybody, for coming over here. It's a nice, cool room, so hopefully we're enjoying that. We've been thinking about sustainability. I think it's in the DNA of Amazon for a long time. I mean, some of the programs really started, we are customer obsessed, so it started with our packaging and thinking about reinventing packaging. We had something called frustration-free packaging that goes back over a decade. In terms of reinventing the customer experience to present recyclable packaging, no clamshells, no twist ties, fully recyclable. But I joined the company almost 9 years ago, and that's when we began to formalize some of the sustainability efforts, really around our energy procurement, energy efficiency, renewable procurement, of course, looking at our social responsibility as well, and thinking about circularity, and broadly how we think big, to think about all of our products and services and how we do them more sustainably. What has really been fascinating about kind of the path that we've been on with that is taking that customer obsession and thinking about how do we turn every aspect of what we're doing, whether it's in our Amazon Web Services or studios business or retail business, or the products that we make, and thinking about how do we do that in service of the customer, what would they want to see in terms of sustainability, and how do we put our size and our scale to use. So we've been working on every aspect across the entire business, thinking about kind of what big bets that we would make. We love to innovate. We love to think very long-term at Amazon. And so it's been about taking that kind of long-term big bet, which actually works really well for sustainability.
Right. And we're going to get into that sort of long-term goal that you guys put out there. Kristen, in a way, GM, it's not just integrating sustainability into your business. It's overhauling the entire business. You guys put a date on it, right? All electric by 2035. Take us to the beginning.
Sure. So, I mean, it's interesting listening to Kara. I think a lot of, interestingly enough, analogies between the two companies. I mean, we've been doing, energy efficiency, water efficiency for decades. I would say, though, kind of maybe the turning point was around 2017, and we set a company vision, Mary and the senior leadership team, around zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. And I can remember when it came into, the company-wide, it was, well, how are we going to get to zero, right? But zero really is a lofty goal, and everything we do is aligned to that vision. And you talked about when we kind of made our big, bold goals, and that was in January of 21, and we committed to be carbon neutral in our products and operations by 2040, and to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty U.S. vehicles by 2035, which, as Mary even said on the panel earlier today, no other full-scale automaker has made that commitment, even now. And so it's really, I think, a proud, statement for us, but it really is about transforming the entire industry.
Yep.
And, whether it's our facilities or, if you look at our carbon footprint, the biggest impact we can have is on our vehicles. The customer usage of our vehicles is 75% of our carbon footprint. So a lot happening to really get us there.
And the goals themselves, they are so ambitious. You knew that when you were setting them out. When reality starts to sink in, and I don't know, how do you feel about them at this moment? Because they're noble, they're great goals, but getting there is really challenging, right? Kara, what kind of discussions are had inside of Amazon, even at the highest levels, in terms of how to make this, a huge priority when there's so much going on in the business?
Yeah, so we're a data-driven company, and so one of the things that early on I knew we would need to do in sustainability is to collect that information, have the data to allow our operators and our business leaders to operationalize sustainability within their businesses. So you don't just want to set a goal and then go, how are we going to do this? We want to figure out what are the hot spots within the business? What are the ways in which the biggest decarbonization levers that we can pull? So we spent a number of years looking at that, and then decided to take a very ambitious goal, which we took in 2019 when we set the climate pledge, and we made a goal to be net zero by 2040 across our global operations. And we also did that as a pledge, because I think really importantly, the conversation internally was not only about how can we lead and inspire at the size and the scale that we are at, but how do we bring others along with us in that, in our value chains, in the industries that we work in, because we cannot go this alone. It's incredibly challenging to do this work. And so you have to do it collaboratively. So we came out and we partnered with Christiana Figueres, who architected the Paris Agreement, and we created the Climate Pledge. And we invited others to join us in that. And we now have over 400 companies that have signed up to that 2040 goal and said, we'll do this with you. We want to share information. We want to learn how to do it. So the conversation internally is with each business unit. If you're a logistics and fulfillment business and you're working on last mile or middle mile, if you're in our aviation business or you're in our web services or retail, how do you think about the partners within that business and driving them towards the same goals? Because we need everyone lined up against this if the planet is going to remain livable.
And it's a great point, because you as Amazon can have this goal, but because you work with so many different suppliers and partners and merchants, you have to get them on the program.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kristen, how have you found that, especially in manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely very similar, challenges. I mean, if you look at, so I said 75% of our carbon footprint was the customer usage of our vehicles. The next biggest piece is our supply chain, which is somewhere, around 18 to 20%. It varies. And so we talk a lot about, we say everybody in, with a focus on the EV at the beginning. But it really is going to take everybody. And so we've done, similar. We have a ESG supplier pledge where we've asked our suppliers to sign on to their own commitments around carbon neutrality and a minimum score around human rights and labor relations we measure through EcoVadis. But the intent being, we can do a lot on our own. We're going to do everything we can, whether it be from charging infrastructure or our manufacturing facilities or our vehicles. But it's really going to take the supply chain to come along with us and really drive that down in the tier 2, 3, 4s, which we know we can't get to on our own. And so it's really exciting to see that progress. In fact, last week we held a joint meeting with, I would say, one of the more traditional ICE suppliers, American Axle, who has now started their own supplier sustainability council. And so we held a conference where we were training suppliers on how to now roll this down into their own supply chain to really just perpetuate and hopefully get this snowball effect in a very positive manner.
And why did both of your companies decide to put a hard date on this? Right? It's one thing to say that you're going to do this, but when you put a date on it, you leave yourself open, right, to not fulfilling that, to not stepping up to it. So how did that decision come about?
Ours was based in science. So we took a look at the IPCC reporting.
I'm laughing because yes.
Of course, right? Well, I mean, I think for a lot of companies, that's where you have to anchor your work in something. And so we are, again, as a tech company, a data-driven company, and a science-oriented company, it made a lot of sense to us to start with the science. And looking at the IPCC reporting, we saw, obviously, that even in the last few years, we all see that, the effects of climate change are more intense than anticipated and happening in our communities more regularly than anticipated. And so looking at that and thinking about, we could have set a 2050 goal.
Yep. That's what I mean. Give yourself more leeway.
Yeah.
Or was that leeway that you gave yourself?
No. 2040 is incredibly challenging, but I think that's part of trying to inspire and be a leader and to stretch into it. And also to signal, we need these products and services now. Mm-hmm. We need, transformation in industry. We need investment to happen in early stage decarbonizing technologies. We have our own climate pledge fund. It's a $2 billion fund that we also established in 2020. We've made 22 public investments out of that fund in early stage decarbonizing technology. So we're both catalyzing, electrolyzers and regenerative ag projects and electric aviation and renewables and all of these kinds of things. We also set a goal for 100% renewable by 2030 when we set out the pledge. And we took a look at that a few years ago and actually thought we can move faster. And we pulled it back and we're trying to reach it by 2025. We're currently at 85% to that goal. And just to give you a little bit of a scale on that front, we're the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy globally for the last 3 years. And we have a portfolio of over 400 utility scale and on-site projects, and it's 20 gigawatts of renewables. So that is a lot of renewable energy that we're trying to do. But again, to go back to the collaborative point, we're also trying to bring others along in that and share how are we doing this, how are we executing power purchase agreements, and how does that happen? So all of these goals, they're ambitious, they're challenging, but that's part of what's meant to say we don't have the time when you look at the science.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, and I think it's a great example, the renewable energy. Both of our companies sit on the board of CEBA, Clean Energy Buyers Alliance. And that really is accelerating the availability and the option for us to meet these goals. The same thing. Our original goal for renewable energy was set back in 2016 to be there by 2050. And we've accelerated it a few times, and last year we were able to source out everything we need to be there in the U.S. by 25. We're still working globally, and that goal is 2035. But I think by setting a goal, using science and technology and really focusing on how the company can achieve it, in some cases it's allowing us to go faster. And I think the collaboration and large companies like ours working together really enables that.
Mm-hmm. Now, we talked about the science, but let's talk about the numbers of it, right? Because those can be perhaps a little murkier because you are both huge companies with different businesses trying to grow, and we've just gone through a year of, more of a downturn. We still have this backdrop where folks are talking about whether there might still be a recession. How does that or not affect? I mean, what are the conversations you have with the CFO who is saying, it was really in the good times, we could have brought this goal 5 years forward, but we're going through a tougher time, a downturn now where investors want to see certain other things. How do you respond to those shifts in the macro economy?
I think sometimes it's about the money and the investment, but sometimes it's about the scale of the technology and what's available and where it's at. So it can be a little bit of both. Certainly it's challenging economic times, but we always take those constraints as drivers of innovation and motivation. What's been amazing for me to see personally, I've been doing sustainability
a lot longer than longer than me.
I've been doing it a long time, but I've been in this over 25 years, and so I've seen lots of dips and turns, and I think this time around it was very different. So Amazon very publicly has gone through several reductions in force and layoffs, and we grew in size tremendously during the pandemic, and so right-sizing that and taking a look at our business and making really disciplined decisions. One of the things that remain completely at the top, you asked about internal conversations, is sustainability. And we know our customers want it, we know it's the right thing to do for the planet, and we know it's something as a company we fully believe in. So that stayed at the top, and I think what was fascinating also during the pandemic, we made, again, that climate pledge public in September of 2019. And so, what obviously happened in the spring of 2020, we pivoted like every other company, and safety is at the top of our list, keeping our customers safe, keeping our people safe in our fulfillment network. We became a very necessary distribution network for a lot of industries. And I was fascinated, though, to see companies continue to prioritize sustainability in ways. And I think some of it had to do with as the planet quieted down and people were indoors and they were in their communities and they were experiencing nature in different ways. And some of it had to do with where we were as a world and what we're experiencing in terms of fires and drought and everything in our communities. But to see that we were able to grow that community of companies committed to that goal from nothing to 400 over those last few years when we've been dealing with these challenging, the war in Ukraine and energy crises and economic crises and so forth, to see sustainability remain a top priority for many companies has been, I think, just really inspiring.
Is part of that because it's an investment like anything else, right? Maybe a longer term investment that pays off. Do you think that has sort of gotten through and that's why you see more companies? Or the flip side of that, do they do it because they have to, because there's pressure from shareholders, from society, customers?
Great question. And I mean, from my perspective, I would say, first off, it's the right thing to do. And as a company, it's not just about what we do, but it's how we do it. So it is important. It's important, as you said, it's important to shareholders. It's important to, frankly, current and future employees as well. But I would take a step back and say it's a growth and value opportunity for the company as well. And so if you look at, saving water, saving energy, eliminating waste, frankly, even renewables have been good financial decisions on top of good for the environment. And so as we weave sustainability, I joked that said I haven't been in I've only been in this role for a little over 2 years, but I've been at GM for 29, and 27 of those were in product development, doing kind of electrical engineering and, autonomous work and all of that. But to see how we weave sustainability into everything we do, just like safety and quality. So it's no longer just, this team focused on these initiatives. It's every individual thinking about what they do and how it contributes. So an engineer at the very start of the design process saying, how does this part now be recycled at the end? What materials do I choose? So it does, have a process where it's using less water, less energy, and those type of things. So it's exciting to see it progress, even in just the short amount of time I've been in the role.
When you talk about the right thing to do, right, that's something historically in business that you have to find the business case to it. You don't do something because it's the right thing to do. But my colleague Andrew was talking about this in an earlier panel, but I think it was a business roundtable meeting. They put out that your duty to shareholders is not just fiduciary, it's not just the financials, but it has to incorporate some other things like ESG, climate pledge, et cetera. How has that changed or not changed the discussion?
I mean, I would say from our perspective, I think we're attracting talent that didn't necessarily consider, a traditional automaker, right, because of who we are and what we're doing and what we said we're going to do. We've got, recent hires, really 40% of our workforce, if not more now, has only been with the company for less than 5 years. New talent from we just announced our chief communications officer from Google, new head of software from Apple, right? And so really bringing people into the industry that maybe hadn't considered it because of what we're saying and who we are.
I think it's that, and it's your social license to operate around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, in many communities, they're, again, experiencing heat indices like they've never seen before, and they're saying, so if you want to grow in those communities and you want to offer your products and services, you want to build more, you have to do that sustainably. And, utilizing those materials, I think there are a lot of creative ways where, yes, sometimes there is a premium. Sustainable aviation fuel is one thing I think right now we'd all love to see the cost curve come down on. And some of that, we're going to make an investment early on in order to continue to send that demand signal. But some of these things, you can get very creative and you can save a lot of money. Every time we take waste out of our business, right? Mm-hmm. And we deliver a customer with a product with, no Amazon overbox or no excess packaging, that's terrific for us and it's terrific for the customer. Right. When we build with low, carbon concrete, it's great for everybody. And we're developing those products and services by, demanding more availability and more scale of them.
Right. I found it interesting. We were talking ahead of this, and you said don't hesitate to do the 1 day or 2 day shipping because in some cases, does anyone avoid 1 or 2 day shipping because they think they feel guilty about it or something? A few hands. Well, you can debunk that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. When you work at Amazon, people love to talk to you about their packages and their shopping and their delivery.
Our problems.
Yeah. And I find a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm really into sustainability, so I always delay the shipping. And I say, please don't. And that's like a counterintuitive moment for folks. Our same day and same day shipping are our lowest carbon options, which is interesting, right? So a lot of people think the speed at which we're delivering must be, because it's so speedy, because we can get something to you that fast, it must be bad. Turns out that's the best thing you can do, because what that means is you're choosing localized inventory already. So our system has already optimized for that inventory or that product that if you're choosing it to be delivered fast to you, it's close to you, then I'm not putting it on an airplane, right? I'm having an e-bike or a Rivian van or a walker or
a Bright Drop.
Or, yes.
I'm working on her.
A what?
Our Bright Drop vans.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, we're doing sustainable transportation to get that to you. So a lot of what's interesting about some of these things, and that was part of our, our ramp up in that data collection. That was something my team didn't know until we went deep into the data and we started looking at it and going, is this right? this is really an interesting finding.
Yeah.
And so the more we discover things like that, or we can talk about them, or we can go in and work with our supply chain inventory optimization teams and say, hey, have we thought about where we're building, and can we build closer to rail, and can we move inventory in places that then make the transport, which is a big carbon lever, more sustainable? Those are great things to play with in the algorithms and the back end of the company. So the renewable energy stuff is important, and getting the electrification of fleet, incredibly important. We're loving to see all those vans on the road. But having those interesting things, when I can talk to a software developer engineer and I can say, your day-to-day job is incredibly important, and if you can really go in and deep dive on the algorithm and we can make a change about how we place inventory, that's like a whole paradigm and mental model shift for people that's so exciting.
Kristen, what do you think is maybe one of the big misconceptions about GM and its sustainability?
Oh, a good question. I would say that we're old and slow and traditional. And I think people don't understand or appreciate the technology and innovation that happens every single day in everything we do. I mean, we're a company that's been built on innovation, but the technologies that come out, I mean, whether it's the autonomous work that we're doing, advances in safety technology, battery technology. And so I think sometimes because we've been around for as long as we have, people think we're slow or we're old. And in reality, I think we're setting the bar on innovation like you wouldn't believe.
Okay, let me throw another, I don't know if it's a misconception, but you can clear it up for us here. There's sometimes complaints that Amazon has misleading carbon accounting, that you're just buying credits to offset or planting trees, and this isn't really a true way to do it. So how do you respond to that?
We don't utilize offsets in our carbon footprint, so that's clear. We publish our carbon methodology. We've been publishing our carbon footprint for many years. We have it externally assured. We comply with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And we publish a full scope 1, 2, and 3 footprint that everybody can deep dive on, along with our renewable energy methodology. So we're trying to actually crack open all of these things and make them very transparent. And also, the external assurance is really, I mean, it's an extra step. It's a process not every company goes through, but we felt that would be also something we should do. Right. So yeah, all of that information is out there for anyone to deep dive on.
But there always is pushback, and it feels like in polarized society, there's a phrase woke capitalism, right? That maybe you guys are doing this, or big companies, anyone's doing this as a marketing tool, not really because it's the right thing to do or they care about the environment. Does that affect the way you run your business, or is that noise? Do you consider that noise? And Kristen, maybe you first.
I mean, for me, I would say it's noise. I mean, we set this, this vision around 000 back in 17. We set the big goals in 21, and nothing's changed. I mean, our portfolio, you can see, we've said we're going to transition our entire portfolio, and that's everything from, an Equinox, which is a great family vehicle, to, a full-size Silverado EV, to a Hummer Supertruck EV. And I think our actions continue to show that we're committed. We're committed internally, we're committed externally, and so, no, I think noise is a great comment.
We're a younger company than GM, but I think if, our focus is kind of heads down. Again, look at the science, do the things that are right. So look for the signal, not the noise. It is absolutely noise, because people, if you pay attention to the external environment, your head would be on a swivel. And it would be very distracting, especially for our teams, which we urgently, these people who are, particularly the folks, not only in my organization who have jobs 24/7 focused on sustainability, but we have 9,000 people in the company who have signed up as sustainability ambassadors at Amazon. So these are folks who don't, day to day, their job might be something else, but they've raised their hand and said, we want to do something sustainable in my job every day. So we have tons of people who are just like, tell us what to do, or they're seeing opportunities on the fulfillment center floor or in the movie studio or whatever, raising their hands and saying we want to do something. We got to keep everybody focused. We don't have time to kind of listen to that noise. So we set our goals. We drive the science. We have internal goals. We set targets every year in each business, and we're working on that. And I think the rest is, it will come and go.
Are there companies out there, do you think, that are sort of using Band-Aid solutions or jumping on the bandwagon that hurts the overall goals? I'm not asking you to name names, but do you think everyone is very genuine about it? And I guess, like, just how do you, because, you know, GM and Amazon are some of the biggest companies, and they're consumer-facing companies, and they're in the spotlight. So the reason I sort of asked that is, how do you, that's a different kind of noise that could affect you and what you're trying to accomplish.
The way I would frame that is, we have leadership and have had leadership all along who's understood the science, who dives deeply into the work. We're known for, you know, writing our 6-pagers and going deeply into that work. And we've always had leadership that has tried to fully understand this, to follow the science, to commit to it, and to not waver from that. And that's a very advantageous position to be in. We have never, you know, once wavered from that position. And so the direction from the top, so from bottom up and top down, is aligned.
Right.
And I would say some of my colleagues, people in our roles in other companies, they may not have that. And that is more challenging. They may not have aligned leadership.
That full support.
Full support, or they may not, or they may have leadership that's newer and doesn't quite understand it yet and doesn't know where it fits in the priorities. So that is challenging for folks in these roles. I think it's just a matter of, you know, continuing to educate and continuing to drive with science, and, you know, focusing the business on the opportunities.
Let me maybe ask it in a different way.
Sure.
If you have a colleague at a company that doesn't have that full support, what's your advice to another chief sustainability officer that needs to get everyone on board and needs their CEO, CFO, the executives to see the value in this?
Yeah, I mean, we know. I mean, we sit in a lot of forums together, and it's certainly out there. I mean, I think I can't imagine doing the job and not having that support, because it would be obviously extremely difficult. But it is such, I think it comes down to, as we've both talked, this is weaved into our entire business. So it's not something that you can just peel out. And I think companies need to progress along that journey and find the ways to, because frankly, our employees expect it, our investors expect it, and it's, without that, you won't get it done.
Yeah.
You can't just make it an add-on. I mean, again, internal to us, and you talked about safety as well. Safety's first. There's no question, right? On anything we do, safety is first, and it's part of everyone's job. Quality, sustainability, right? They're weaved in. They're not something you can just pick and choose, which also goes back to that, you know, the financial aspects, is it becomes part of the business strategy, so there's not a constant debate of whether you do something or not.
Is there misunderstanding in other industries? I'm going to quote Mike Wirth, the Chevron CEO, who was speaking in an earlier panel. He said, there's a lot of statements and pledges made among big tech. Some CEOs didn't understand the challenges. He didn't name names. I don't know if he's talking about Amazon. But do you think, again, that there's been this drive to do this, that maybe there was a misunderstanding of all the challenges? I mean, has Amazon kind of gone back to the table? You guys had goals, and then you put it all under one pledge, right?
Yeah, I think it's bold to say our CEOs don't understand this. Our CEOs are incredibly smart, incredibly attuned to the challenges, paying attention to this at all points throughout the year. Also, our board of directors, also all of our operators. So it's not to say it's not challenging, but it is fully understood how challenging this is, and what is the alternative? Yeah. So. You have to take, if you're going to be a leader, and frankly, if you're the size of our companies, you should be a leader. Exactly. You should be pointing your scale and your size and the assets that you have and your people and your talents towards this issue. This is the issue of our time, and we're in the decisive decade. So you should be pointing your resources toward this, and they fully understand it. And that is not to say we know how everything is going to happen and we have the solutions. We don't. We've already been clear about that. And we've been clear we need others to come along with us and to invent with us and to push and to go further and faster. But it's not to say we don't understand it.
Right.
No.
Let's talk a little bit about the technology side of things. Both Amazon and GM invest in new technologies, sometimes big, sometimes little, autonomous driving, electric vehicles. How do you think about that? How much do you think about a return on the investment, right? When Rivian went public, I remember Amazon made a huge amount, but Amazon invested when they were tiny and smaller, excuse me. And and you weren't sure what it was going to do in the public market. So I guess, Kristen, how do you think about that, your investments in autonomous driving? What are some of the other interesting areas that you think can be particularly useful in your goals as a chief sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, and so we look at innovation across the entire value chain, right? If you look at what we're doing from a critical materials standpoint in the various investments, that it almost seems like it's one a week. There was a new one today, which is just exciting to see these things happening about building a sustainable, resilient supply chain, here in North America. But innovation is happening, whether it be battery technology. I mean, if you look at the battery technology from the current Bolt to the Ultium, right? I mean, it's 70% less cobalt usage. And so we've got innovation happening in every aspect of the business. One of the unique ones we did is we did an investment last year with a company called Wind Catching Systems in Norway, which is they're developing offshore wind technology that in the same footprint, they can get about 15 times more energy. Excuse me. Instead of a single turbine, it's an array of turbines, and it can go farther offshore, so you eliminate the site issues and those type of things. So we're really looking at what are the innovations, who are the companies, whether it be battery recycling, companies that we have a GM Ventures division that, we work very closely with from a sustainability standpoint, but to find those companies and technologies that we can partner with to help accelerate. Kara talked about sending a market signal, and it's really about finding the ways for us with our scale to be able to accelerate these initiatives.
Yeah. Kara, talk a little bit about,
Yeah, we look across, the way we think about it, we look across all of the ways in which we need to decarbonize, and then think about, okay, what solutions do we need? Where can we invest in solutions that either don't yet exist or are very small and we can scale them? And so I'll give you a couple of different examples. And, we have a whole site you can look at about all these through the Climate Pledge Fund and other things we've done. But, we know we're going to need more green hydrogen. So we've invested in companies producing electrolyzer supply. That is probably a pretty good bet. We know that we have a big problem in aviation. Now, we're continuing to buy SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, and we aligned with Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance and all that. But we've also invested in Zero Avia and electric aviation, which is kind of a big bet. May work, may not. We've just done a test flight from Amazon hub to hub, though. It's exciting. We invested in Hippo Harvest, which is a regenerative ag company on growing lettuces with 98% less water. Down in Pescadero, California. We've invested in Carbon Cure, which is a carbon sequestration additive to cement. When we looked at that, we used it in our HQ2 that we built in Virginia, and really exciting progress there. We expected to see about, I think it was a 10 to 20% reduction in the carbon in the cement, and it turns out it was 20. And then we deployed it in 40 buildings. So we also look where we can test and trial within our own system to figure out where these things we can scale them ourselves, but we can also provide very quick feedback to these companies so that they can grow and they can scale and they can, others can use these solutions.
And that's probably appealing to them. They have that
Yeah.
sort of a much larger test bed.
Yeah.
Last question for me before we get to Q&A. How much of your time and how much do you think about the government and their sort of how that dialogue with them, but also how they can encourage habits, right, that will help you achieve your goals? Kristen, maybe you first.
Yeah, I work very closely with our, public policy and government relations folks. They have ESG leaders in their team, that are part of kind of our sustainability council. So this takes everybody. It's not a space, we've got to collaborate. We can't go at it alone. We can't build the entire charging infrastructure on our own. Permitting is an issue, getting more renewables, the decarbonization of the grid. Those are all things that as one company or even as a group of companies, we're not going to be able to do by ourselves. And so having the government partnership and working together is going to be key for it really to be successful.
Right.
Yeah, I think the conversations with government are more exciting in this area than they have been in a long time, certainly in the United States. With the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there's capital available that needs to get deployed quickly, and the private sector is a part of that deployment and those solutions. And so we're really excited about some of the things that we see happening there. I think there's a new kind of energy around that. And government, just to build on what Kristen said, there's a lot of this is things that need to change in cities and things that need to change in urban areas and greening of grids. And those are policy changes that need to get enacted so that we can all continue to do the things we want to do and to decarbonize with that kind of big push behind. And I would say make sure that happens in a just transition. Right. So make sure that the communities that are most affected by some of these issues receive, healthier air and, better living conditions first, because I think that's very important as we deploy all of these things.
Are you both encouraged that this has become a real priority for policymakers? And are you saying that has shifted over the last decade, 5 years or so?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. Great. Let's open it up for Q&A. Get some microphones roaming.
Hi, it's John Mennel from Deloitte. Good to see you both. Two questions. One, I guess mostly to Kara, both of you. What's still hardest that you haven't been able to crack yet? You mentioned aviation, and maybe that's it, or is it a waste stream that you're trying to deal with? But what's still kind of hardest on your agenda? And Kristen, same question for you, but I'd also love you to talk about the Tesla charging deal, and does that trickle down into your Scope 3 estimates, and does that just accelerate your roadmap for EVs, and how does that work?
I think just to build on it, aviation certainly difficult, middle mile, also difficult, line haul trucking, kind of those bigger solutions. And then, maritime. So we've got some great partnerships there with the Zero Emission Buyers Alliance and Zemba. But, changing port infrastructure, I mean, that's a huge beast of, a thing to tackle. We want to be a driver of that. We want to see, more sustainable maritime operations, but things like that are large infrastructure projects in the built environment, in maritime, in aviation, in middle mile. Those are some of the biggest, heaviest carbon areas for us, and also probably some of the hardest to change.
Yeah, I mean, from a total infrastructure standpoint, it's decarbonizing the grid. I mean, in order for us to be zero emissions, we need to charge with green energy. So that's the biggest. Electrifying my paint ovens is probably the next one, but it's a small piece of the pie, but it's the one that we don't have a good solution for yet. As far as the North America charging standard, it's really, when you look at it, of how do we provide the best experience for our customer, right? And so we've got access today. I think the number's around 13,000. Charging stations that are available for GM customers through your app to be able to identify where to go. This gives them another 12,000 more. And so it really is, and, as an engineer, I can talk about standards for a long, long time, whether you want to talk Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards in the U.S. and how that applies across the globe and everything else, right? But having one standard to design to is a huge advantage for the industry. And so, when you look at this as what it does for the customer, but what it does for, the rest of the industry, I think it's a win-win.
Right over here.
Hi, Greg from Aspen. I'm curious from both of your companies on the role of autonomous vehicles, whether it's autonomous cars or package delivery, and kind of how you view that playing into sustainability and decarbonization, or if that's just a completely separate thing that doesn't really equate.
I can go first because mine's quick. It's not really a part of at least my team's focus at this point. It's so small for us. I mean, there's some sidewalk robots, Zooks, but I mean, compared to our network, it just isn't a factor at this point. So I don't know yet. Probably is the answer.
Is that a belief that it's still too far off?
I would say personally, I don't know. So probably somebody with more knowledge.
I'm going to take her for a ride in an origin out in San Francisco. First off, I mean, all of our AVs, our autonomous vehicles, are EVs, right? So I think it certainly plays into our overall sustainability initiatives, but it's much bigger than that, right? It opens up transportation to people that maybe don't have it today. We are 100% gated by safety. And it's super exciting to see, real driverless rides, full level 4 autonomy happening in some of the most complex cities. You can take one.
It's very creepy.
In San Francisco. Have you been in one?
I haven't been in one, but
all right,
I've
we're
seen
gonna
them.
get you
I'm
in
dying.
one.
I'm on the wait list.
I see this in Seattle too.
All right, we're gonna get you in one. Because and a lot of people talk about it. It's the first, maybe 15 seconds or so where you're like, this is really odd. And then all of a sudden you're on your phone. It's really surreal. I mean, and we, again, I will say it 100 times, but we are gated by safety. All of our data that we do with regulators and everybody else, I mean, we're offering customers driverless rides out there, and it's an incredible future to think about what it can do. When you think back to our vision of 0, 0, 0, right? 0 crashes, 0 emissions, 0 congestion, and the congestion piece, the one commodity or one precious thing we all have is time, and to give people any time back is a huge win. And what it could potentially do from a safety standpoint, and what congestion does for emissions, right? They all play together. So I'm extremely optimistic and extremely excited at how much we've been able to scale and roll out in the additional cities.
I thought of another question. Any more? Maybe I'll ask one last one if there aren't any. Please.
Thanks. Michael Stubbs from Los Angeles. As a consumer, and I am a consumer, I am encouraged by what I'm hearing from you guys, you ladies. But how do we as consumers have confidence in not just the transparency you refer to, but actually the validity of the data? Because I think there's a report that came out just last month about Chevron. 93% of Chevron's carbon offsets were deemed worthless. So, by reputable folks who did the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer it easily. We both said we're not dealing in offsets.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Well, let me clarify. So finish your question, please.
So I just because that's a large company, that you'd say that we should probably be able to rely on the data that they put forth, but apparently you can't. So how do we as consumers? I mean, we're bound by the decisions and the actions that you take. I've tried very hard to decrease my footprint, and it's extremely hard. I actually need you, the providers of the services and the things that we consume, to actually do the work. We will applaud you, I believe. I think we could say probably universally in here, that's what we want.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with this question, so thank you for asking. I came to Amazon because I wanted to transform consumption, and I thought, what a better place to do it, right? And I think you're asking a fundamentally fantastic question, which is that this trust that we will place, in the products and services that we want, and we want to make our lives better, and we want, to have more time available to us, and all of these things, right? How do we know that that's real? And so I go back to being grounded in science, but not everybody wants to read the science and the reports and to go deep dive and to make sure that it aligns, and also sustainability means different things to different people. If we ask our customers, somebody's going to say, well, it means shopping local to me, and somebody else will say it means a durable product, and somebody else will say it means organic, and and that's valid, right? So we've tried a couple of different things. One is we do make all our information available for those who do want to dig in and deep dive, and we have a tenet at the company too, like this is with everything that we do, it's sort of unless you know better. So we're in constant learning mode. This is hard stuff. And so I think we have to have a little bit of the room to make mistakes and also get better and better and better. And we've tried to be as transparent about that as possible because we want to go really fast and we want to do it the best way possible. The one example I would give you for us is our Climate Pledge Friendly. So when people have said for a long time, I want to shop sustainably on Amazon. I'm a consumer, but I don't want to think about it. You make it easy for me, right? So we gave our teams that challenge and said, make it easy. We started and we looked, and there's 800 plus eco labels out there. That is not easy, and that is not helpful.
Yeah.
So we took a look at that. We then broke that down to a universe of 420 and then down to 20. And we launched a label called Climate Pledge Friendly with those 20 external certifications that we thought met the bar of science. And we said products that can qualify for those, we'll automatically ingest those into that program. And then you could filter your search by Climate Pledge Friendly, and you can shop that way. And then we went out and started talking to folks that sell on Amazon and said, we would like you to make sure your products qualify. And if you have other things that you want us to look at that meet the bar of that science, great. And we've been doing this for a couple of years. We have a couple 100,000 ASINs in their products. And recently, the European Commission recognized that program as a high bar, which for me was a big stamp of approval because they're tough. So I think things like that take a lot of diligence, and they take maintaining a bar of credible science. But the end result is hopefully you make it easy, for the customer who doesn't have a lot of time. They just want to filter and do that. But that's a big investment on a company's part to do that. And then we also have to electrify the delivery to you and make sure it arrives in the right minimal packaging that's fully recyclable, and you can take it back, in a circular way. So it has to have the full life cycle approach to it, and that's just the retail part of our business. So when we say we're customer obsessed, that's what we're thinking about, is how do we make this easy for the customer?
Part of being customer obsessed, though, is making it affordable, too, right?
Absolutely.
We're in a room, everyone can say this is a good goal, but, going back to the whole idea that it's going to be a tougher economic backdrop, does sustainability, we've kind of seen so far in EVs, it's supposed to come down, make your products more expensive to consumers?
Yeah, I would say from a vehicle standpoint, there's no doubt that the battery technology is advancing, right, and quickly. You can look at statistics from our original Volt to the Bolt to where we're at today, and the savings that we've seen there, and we'll continue to see that, right? We're innovating every single day for new materials and new chemistries on how to provide, more efficiency, more range, easier, cheaper materials, et cetera. I think the data will continue to show that, and the scale, right? The Equinox EV that'll be out this year starts at around $30,000. It's an affordable vehicle for a family-sized, SUV, and so I think you'll continue to see that transition happen over time.
Yeah, that's why scale matters a lot.
Yeah.
And I think not only about the retail customer and the products and services that drive that down, but something like cloud computing, right? When you move to cloud computing, it's 70, 85% more efficient,
right.
And you can dial up and down your energy usage really easily, right? So that's a big win for the world, if you move even just getting off premises to cloud computing. So stuff like that, I think it's not just the efficiency at which your business can move and scale, but the energy impact of that is really important.
And I know Amazon, too, is working on making that even more efficient
Absolutely.
with technology. I think that's a great place to leave it. Ladies, thank you so much. Great
Thank
conversation.
you.
Thank you guys for your great time. Thank you.